whenever the problem occurs. So here the triggers have no chance of receiving parameters. So here triggers doesn't contain the parameters, where the procedure contains the parameter. The triggers will send only the just message. The basic idea about the trigger is when you perform some task, if there any problem occurs, or if you want to give any message to the user, how do you give the message? Nothing but the concept of triggering. And the transaction cannot be committed or rolled back inside a trigger. Generally, procedures are used. What is the purpose of procedure? With the help of the procedure, we can write the statements. And with the help of the statement, we can able to update the records in the database table. And also we can say the commit the records also. But you cannot commit the records. Means you can't able to store the records permanently. Or if you want to recall the records, the rollback in the trigger. So only the basic idea of the trigger is to know how the statements are being executed. Whenever the problem exists, how we are able to solve the problem. And what precautions you have to take care is only the concept of triggering. How to create the trigger? If you want to create the trigger, you have to use the statement create trigger. And here the schema is nothing but the database. So what is the database name? Dot trigger name. Database name dot trigger name on table. So here first you have to specify the database name and the trigger name and on which table the trigger has to be filed. So here there are three options after insertion, updation, deletion. So for example, you say create trigger, the trigger name so and so on table EMP after insert. So what will happen? Whenever you insert the record, it will say just give a message to you. That is called inserting the trigger. So when you update the record, for example, you have updated one record, and if you want to display the information to the user that the record is been updated successfully, then you have to use the trigger. So see the general example, when you prepare an online application, when you fill an online application and click on the submit button, you will get a message that the record has been submitted successfully. So this is nothing but the trigger. So if you click something, what you have to do? If you perform some task, what you have to do? Nothing but the concept of trigger. So see an example here. Create table. First, I am creating the table. If you want to work on the trigger, the basic idea of the trigger is to identify the errors or the precautions, and you have to give the suggestions. But for that purpose, you need a database table. That's why here I'm tabling one table in the following fields. And I'm inserting the record into the database table. And next, here I am creating one more table, and I am using two attributes, ID and audit action. So now I am creating the trigger, the create trigger, the trigger name on apply. So here I didn't mention the database name. Why? Because myself feel that I am already in the database. See, whenever you open the MySQL, what you will use? You will use the database name. Use the database name. Then you have to say the create trigger. So for example, I am in one database and I would like to create the trigger on another database. Then you have to use the create table trigger, create trigger. Here you have to specify the database name. This is the schema name. For example, here the employee table is present in the algorithm, algorithm database, but I am in the present database is the student database. So for example, I am in the student database and I would like to create a trigger for the table employee which exists in the algorithm database. So in that case, we have to specify table database name dot trigger name on employee. Otherwise, you can directly say that I use algorithm. Then you can say create trigger tr insert employees. So here, so for what purpose I am doing here? For insert. So means whenever you insert the record into the employee table, the trigger tr insert employee will be fired. So this trigger will fire. This trigger will fire whenever we are trying to, whenever you insert the record into the database table employee. So see here, select ID at ID equal to ID from inserted. So what is the concept of this one is, this will insert a new record. This statement will insert a new record into the second table employee audit test with the ID, see, with the ID which we have inserted in the table employee. For example, if you, and for example, say this one, here I'm inserting a record in employee table with the ID 6. What will happen? This information, see, by using this ID, a new record will be inserted to the second table by specifying that new employee ID with ID so and so ID name 6, and at what time you have inserted. So this is nothing but providing the information about the inserted data in the employee table. What is the advantage of this one? Whenever you insert a record into the employee table, automatically respected information will be provided in the employee audit test. What is the advantage of this one? When you see the data in the employee audit test, select star from employee audit test, I can able to know that how many records have been created and what are their employees and when they have been created. So what is the advantage of this one is, when you insert some data, into the database table, what you want to say, whether you want to store the information in the database table, in other table. Otherwise, if you want to display a message, so anything can be possible. So this is the second trigger. The trigger is for the deletion. So here the trigger name TR transaction delete employee on employee table for delete. So here in the same way, I am inserting the record again to the table, second table, and it is giving the position information that which record have been deleted. So means whenever you delete a record from the database table, automatically the respective information will be inserted in the new table called employee audit test. Say for example, delete from employee where ID equal to 2. So when you remove this record, automatically the table employee audit test will be updated with the information that an existing employee with 2, employee with ID 2 is deleted at the so and so time. So what is the advantage of this one? We can able to get the information that whenever you do something with the database table, what you have to take care and what message you want to display. Because of this one, we can able to create the log of information about each and every transaction, that what happened in the database table. So next one, types of SQL triggers. So when you see the SQL server, there are different types of triggers. Basically, 3 types of triggers are there: data definition language triggers, data manipulation language triggers, and login triggers. What's the DDL triggers? So these triggers will fire whenever you are trying to add a new database column, or when you try to add the constraint, or when you try to change the data type, or when you try to delete a column, or when you try to remove a table. So whatever the commands that are related to the DDL operations are being performed, the statements have been executing at that point of time, these triggers will be fired. So what is the advantage of this one? For example, some people want to trying to delete the table. It will give a message that on which time which table has been deleted. So because of that, we can able to identify that who have been deleted the table. In the same way, data manipulation. What is the data manipulation? Insertion, deletion, updation. For example, when you create the trigger and apply on the DML side, what will happen whenever you insert a record to the database table, or when you update the database table record, or when you delete the database table record, you can able to provide the message to the user that, or we can able to store the information that these people have been deleted the recorded, these people are insert the new records, these people are update the records, and everything can be recorded. And login triggers. Basically, these triggers are for the purpose of providing the credentials like user information. For example, when you try to log into the HTML page, for example, ICICI Bank website, whatever it may be, first you have to provide the username and password. So when you use this trigger, for example, I have inserted the username as so and so and password is a wrong password. Automatically, the information will be stored in the specific table that this person, this time, this for this email ID, some specific person have entered the wrong password. So because of this one, you can able to understand that how many times the user tried to attempt my user ID. That's why see most of the cases when you do the bank transaction, when you insert the ATM and enter the PIN number, if you enter the invalid PIN number, automatically you get a mail from the bank that one attempt have been completed, unfailed attention. So what is the advantage of this one? This is not the trigger. What will happen when you do the transaction not happen successfully, and there is an error in the transaction, it will return the message to you. The same way, the transaction has been successfully done, and we get a message that your account has been debited with so and so amount. So both the cases we are getting the message when the transaction is success or when transaction is failed. So because of this one, the user can able to understand that what transaction he is performing and what are the any wrong in the transaction process, anything can be possible. So here the DDL triggers are nothing but. So when you try to create a table or when you try to alter the table or to drop the table, in these areas, the trigger will fire. The DDL triggers are useful for the following scenarios. When we use this one, when you need to prevent the database schema. What is the schema? Schema is nothing but the structure of the database. So when you try to change the structure of the database, for example, I have created 4 tables and you would like to add one more table. Otherwise, you want to change the primary key and foreign key for the tables. So if you want to change the database structure, in that case, we can able to prevent this type of activities with the help of the triggers. When we need to audit changes made in the database, the audit changes nothing but, for example, changing of a data type, changing the data type size. These are nothing but the simple reasons. So in those cases also we can able to identify. The next one, we need to respond to a change made in the database. For example, when I create the database table, it will give a message that so-and-so user at so-and-so time has created this table. So this is nothing but responding to the change in the database. So means whatever if you create the new database, or when you update the database, or when you add a new column or delete a column, every time you can able to get the response from the system that, so you have done this transaction. So DML triggers files in the case of insertion or updation or deletion happens. The DML triggers are 2 types, after triggers and instead of triggers. After nothing but after the transaction is successfully completed. See here. So after the trigger it fires when the SQL server completes the triggering action successfully. So means that, for example, I insert the record. The record has been inserted successfully. Then it will give a message to you. When you insert the record and the transaction is completed successfully, then it will give a fire the trigger and give a message that the record have successfully inserted. This instead of triggers means before executing. So before executing. So here, after insertion, after updation trigger, after deletion trigger. So after insertion means when you insert the record and record have been inserted successfully, then it will give a message that record inserted successfully. When you update the record, the transaction is completed successfully, then you get a message updated successfully. In the case of here I create the trigger, create trigger, the trigger name and table name after insert, update or delete. So when you apply all these things, what will happen? When you insert the record or when you update the record, when you delete the record, the trigger will fire. So instead of triggers are nothing but the triggers fire before SQL server begins to execute. So for example, when you click on, when you want to enter the student name, when you go to click on the box, then automatically it will give a message that please enter the capital letters. So you are not entering any data. Before entering the data, it will give a message that please enter the name in the capital letters, or please enter the data birth in that specific format. and please enter the mobile number in the specific format. So this is called instead of trigger. The instead of triggers will fire before the execution of the SQL server statements. So here these are also called happen instead of insertion, updation, deletion. So means before inserting the record, before updating the record, before deleting the record. So logon the triggers are the fires in response to logon event. The logon event occurs when a user section is generated with the SQL Server instance. So it means generally when you log into the user, when you create the username and password, automatically one section will be created in behalf of you. So in this, for example, if the section is expired, then we get a message, trigger will fire and give a message that the section has been expired. Please log in again. So these are called the different types of event. If you don't give a message to the user cannot understand what happened. So if you are not working for the long time and you didn't do anything on the screen, then automatically the screen will be locked and automatically you are unable to log into the system. In that case, it will give a message that the section has been suspended. Please log in again. And you have many database with multiple tables. The show or list triggers comes in handy. For example, if I would like to know how many triggers are there in my database, and we can able to use the concept that select name comma is instead of trigger from sys triggers. The sys triggers are nothing but the database default database which contains the complete triggers information. So this is the concept of trigger. So if you want to use the triggers, what you have to do? First, you have to create the table. So is it required to work on only the table, the triggers? Yes. Trigger will always work whenever you do some operations. When you do the operations, and you try to insert the record or update the record, delete the record, create the table, modify the table, these cases only we can able. Or if you want to log in. So it means without having the information of database, there is no possibility of activating the triggers. So now come to the point, what is the difference between the function and procedure and the trigger? Let's see, here if you say the function procedure is a PL-SQL block. PL-SQL block contains statements. They have parameters or may not, but they don't have return type. We can call this is the concept of PL-SQL procedure. Function is a PL-SQL block, contains statements. They have parameters or may not have parameter, but they have return type. We can for any number of times. Let's come to the point trigger. So they don't have parameters. They don't have parameters. They don't have return type. We can call trigger. for one time only. So this is the difference between the triggers and procedures. The syntax for the procedure is moreover, it contains the parameters like in parameter, in or in out, in out parameters. The function will also call parameters in out. So this is the difference between the triggers, functions, and next one. Procedures cannot be recursive. Functions can be recursive. So this is a concept of procedures, functions, and triggers. Just I will just brief another topic about that one. That is the concept of cursors. So what is the cursor? So generally we can call the cursor is like a pointer. The cursor is a pointer. What is the advantage of pointer? For example, if you want to retrieve the records from the database table, if you want to retrieve the records from the database table, you can write a query that select star from EMP. When the query returns more than one row, whenever the query returns the more than one row, in that case, we will use cursors. So what is the use of the cursor here is the cursor can store the multiple records at a time. So see here, generally when you process an SQL statement, the memory will be created at somewhere. But the cursor is a pointer which can point the memory. For example, I say select star from employee. So 10 records will be stored in memory. With the help of the cursor, we can able to point the records, each and every record, and we can able to run the query. For example, I would like to call all the records and I want to display only the information about the records who are getting the salary more than 5,000. So in that case, what I will do, first I will fetch all the records from the database table. And with the help of the pointer like cursor, I can able to retrieve the specific records only. So here, basically here the cursor is used to refer to a program to fetch and process the rows returned by the SQL statement. So here, for example, I will say select star from EMP. So what will happen? This query will return more than one row. Generally, we can't able to store more than one row in a normal SQL statement. That's why with the help of the cursor, we can able to store multiple rows. If the query result more than one row, in that case, we are unable to point in the normal SQL. So we will use the concept of cursor, which provides a facility to fetch result of records which are more than one, and with the help of the pointer, we can able to get the information. For example, I will say select star from EMP. In this case, this query may return more than one row. Generally, we cannot hold more than one row in a normal query. For this purpose, I will assign this query to the cursor. Now the cursor will fetch the information from the query and it will store into it. And with the help of the cursor pointer, it will read one by one record and it will execute. So that is the concept of cursors. So basically the cursors are used to refer the output of the SQL query which have more than one row. Generally, if the query returns only the single row, there is no issue. If the query returns more than one row, in that case, you must need to take the help of the cursor, because a normal SQL statement cannot hold more than one row. That's why we need to take the cursor. The cursor will hold the multiple records at a time. And with the help of the pointer, the cursor will read the records one by one and they will be executed. So that is the advantage of using the cursor. Generally, how do you write the cursor? The cursors will always write inside the PLSQL block. So here the cursor is not a PLSQL block. Cursor is a pointer which helps us to store more than one record written by an SQL query. That only. So how to create the cursors? Generally, if you want to create the cursor, we have to use the cursor. The cursor name is select statement. For example, cursor C1 is select star from EMP where BPT ID equal to 1. So what will happen? It fetches the output of this query. So this query may returns more than one row. For example, it returns 4 rows. The 4 rows will be stored in the cursor C1. And now with the help of this cursor, I can able to do what are the experiments. So that is the advantage of cursor. If you want to store more than one rows written by this query, we can use cursors. The main idea behind using the cursor is to fetch more than one row written by an SQL statement. Generally, whenever you use, we have to look at only, for example, select. If you want to find the second maximum salary, how can you find? Say select maximum salary from EMP where salary less than select maximum salary from EMP. So in that case, the inner query returns only the single row, single value. If you want to store more than one value or the more than one record, the queries will not support. The SQL will not support. That's why we will take the help of PLSQL block. In the PLSQL block, we will use the concept of cursor. With the help of this cursor, we can able to fetch more than one row or then more than one value which is written by an SQL query. So this is the concept of cursor. Tomorrow I will explain what are how to create the cursor and how to work with the cursor program. Do practice the trigger programs. I will share the video possible or today or tomorrow.